Something is coming that your current imagination is not big enough to contain. That is not a compliment, it is an observation. A specific, energetically grounded observation about the gap between what you have been allowing yourself to picture as possible and what is actually in the process of arriving. The gap is significant, larger than you would guess. And the reason your imagination has not bridged it is not a failure of optimism or vision. It is simply that you have been picturing from inside your current circumstances, and what is coming was assembled outside them. I want to begin by acknowledging something about the version of you that is receiving this reading. You have been careful, not afraid, careful. There is a specific important distinction between those two things that I want to honor before we go anywhere else. Fear contracts and pulls back and refuses engagement. Carefulness continues forward, but with the particular watchful quality of someone who has learned through genuine experience that the full size of hope is a resource that must be managed rather than extended without limit. You have been managing it, allowing yourself versions of hope that were sized for the likelihood of their fulfillment rather than for the full size of what you actually wanted. Building walls on the inside of your wanting that kept the wanting at a level that could be survived if it was not met. Those walls are about to become unnecessary. And the process of discovering they are unnecessary, of watching something arrive that exceeds the careful limit you placed on your own hope, is what is going to blow your mind. Let me describe what I am seeing. Not a single arriving thing. Something more interesting than that. A convergence. Several separate threads that have been developing independently, each one real and each one meaningful on its own terms, arriving at a simultaneous point of resolution that produces something larger than the sum of its individual parts, something that would not have been possible if any one of the threads had not done the specific work it has been doing at the specific pace it has been doing it. Everything was necessary. The parts of your life that felt like they were not moving, that felt like the background noise of a situation that was not going anywhere, were actually part of the infrastructure of what is converging. We're doing specific work that the converging required. We're not stalled, but building in the particular invisible way that things build when they are preparing to produce something that requires significant foundation before it can stand. The foundation is complete. The thing it was building toward is arriving. The foundation is complete. The thing it was building toward is arriving. I want to describe what convergence actually feels like when you are on the receiving end of it, because most people experience components of good things arriving separately and have never encountered the specific quality of several significant things arriving in the same window. It is disorienting before it is celebratory. The mind is accustomed to processing one significant arrival at a time, to absorbing it, integrating it, updating the internal picture of what is true and what is possible before the next significant thing arrives. This is the ordinary pace of change, and the mind is built for it. Convergence does not follow this pace. It does not wait for the integration of one thing before delivering the next. Several things arrive in close proximity, and the mind has to hold all of them simultaneously, partially integrated, partially still being processed in a state that is more like being inside a significant moment than like looking back at one. That is the quality of what is coming, not the orderly, one at a time sequence of good things arriving as rewards for patience. The simultaneous, slightly overwhelming, certainly mind-blown quality of several good things arriving together because they were always going to arrive together, because they were always one convergence rather than several separate events. I want to give you a more specific picture of what this convergence contains, because mind blown is a promise and promises deserve their content. There is something in the area of love, a shift in a connection that has mattered to you, or the arrival of a connection that is going to matter in a form that you have not yet encountered in quite this quality. Something that combines the things that have been hardest to find in combination, the ease of someone who is genuinely comfortable to be around with the substance of someone who has something real to bring, the warmth of someone who actually wants to be there with the depth of someone whose presence rewards extended attention, the combination, the specific, elusive, harder to find than any individual piece combination that has been what you have been hoping for without quite letting yourself state it that directly. It is arriving in a form you will recognize immediately as the thing you have been hoping for, because the recognition is not intellectual, it is physical. Something in your body will respond before your mind has finished processing the information. There is also something in the area of what I will call visibility, the specific quality of being seen in contexts that matter in ways that produce practical results. Work, creative work, professional contribution, something you have been doing or building or offering that has not yet received the level of recognition that corresponds to its actual quality. That recognition is coming, not as a single dramatic event necessarily, as a shift in how the thing you have been building is received, a change in who notices it and how they respond to it. And there is something personal, an internal shift, a quality of feeling at home in your own life that has perhaps been inconsistent, available in some moments and absent in others, that is becoming more permanent, less dependent on external conditions, more simply there as the baseline from which you operate. All three arriving together. I want to speak to the mind blown quality specifically because it is in the title and it carries a specific promise that deserves unpacking. What blows the mind is not simply the good thing. Good things arrive regularly. Some of them are genuinely good. Some of them produce real satisfaction and real warmth and the real temporary lifting of whatever weight has been present, but they do not blow the mind. They arrive within the range of what was expected and are received with the pleasure appropriate to something within that range. What blows the mind is the thing that arrives outside the range. The thing that lands and requires a moment of simply stopping because the processing of it exceeds the bandwidth of normal operation, that produces the specific, slightly breathtaking experience of receiving something and understanding simultaneously that you were not adequately prepared for it, even if you had been hoping for something in its general direction. What is coming for you is outside the range, not outside your deserving, outside your current picturing of what is possible for you in this specific window of your life. And the gap between what you were picturing and what arrives is the specific thing that is going to require the pause. The moment of hands over mouth, eyes wet, something I was told to stop expecting just happened, stillness. That moment is yours. I want to speak to why now, because nothing about timing in readings like this is random, and understanding the now of it helps you understand what has been happening in the period that preceded it. You have been in a preparation that you could not see as preparation while you were inside it. This is the specific, usually frustrating quality of periods that are building towards something significant. They do not feel like building. They feel like waiting. like more of the same, like the ordinary continuation of a life that is functioning adequately but not producing the visible acceleration that would suggest that something is coming. The invisibility of the building is not evidence that the building is not happening. It is simply what building looks like from the inside when what is being built requires a foundation that takes time to lay correctly. You have been laying it through the specific, largely unremarkable, often unglamorous daily choices of someone who continued to show up with integrity even when the showing up produced no visible return, who continued to invest in things that mattered even when the investment was not yet producing evidence of its value, who continued becoming more fully themselves even in the periods when being fully themselves felt like something the world was not yet meeting with equivalent fullness. All of that was the preparation. And preparations, when they are complete, produce what they were preparing for. Tell me in the comments if you can feel something building beneath the surface of your current life. Not something you can see yet, something you can sense. The specific quality of a pressure that is not anxiety and is not quite anticipation, but is something in between. A quality of something approaching that has not yet made its form fully visible. Tell me if you feel that, and tell me which of the three threads I described, the love, the visibility, the internal arrival, feels most alive for you right now. I want to speak to what the happiness in this reading is actually made of, because happiness is not a single thing and the quality of the happiness matters enormously. There are forms of happiness that are temporary and forms that are structural, forms that are contingent on external conditions remaining exactly as they are, and forms that have been built on a foundation solid enough to survive the ordinary variability of life without collapsing. What I am reading for you is the second kind, not the happiness of a single peak moment that exists and then fades back to what preceded it, the happiness of a shift in baseline, of the permanent arrival of something that changes what ordinary feels like. That makes the ordinary moments carry a different quality because what they are ordinary moments within has changed. This is the kind of happiness that people who have it often find difficult to describe to people who haven't, because it does not present as a constant state of elation. It presents as a kind of quiet rightness, a quality of waking up in a version of your life that fits, that was sized correctly for who you actually are and what you actually want and what you actually deserve. That does not require continuous maintenance to stay intact because its integrity is built into its structure. That is what is coming, not a moment. A version of your life, not a moment. A version of your life. I want to give you one more image of what this version of your life actually looks like in its ordinary moments, because I think the ordinary moments are where it most needs to be described. It looks like Tuesday morning, not a special Tuesday, a regular one, with the regular requirements and the regular texture of a day that is not asking you to be on for any particular reason. And in that ordinary Tuesday, a quality of ease that is not absence of difficulty, but absence of the specific background, continuous kind of effort that ordinary Tuesdays have required until now. The effort of being in the slightly wrong place, of maintaining yourself in circumstances that were not quite the right fit, that required continuous small adjustments to keep the fit workable, that consumed a low but real and continuous allocation of energy on the maintenance of the fit. In this version of your life, that maintenance is not required because the fit is right. Not perfect. There is no version of life that is perfect in all its dimensions simultaneously, but right in the specific structural sense that the foundations are correct, that what the life is built on corresponds to who you actually are and what you actually want and what you are actually capable of sustaining. That correspondence is what changes the Tuesday, not from bad to good, from requiring maintenance to simply being livable in a way that feels like something. I want to speak to what you deserve to know about yourself that this reading is pointing toward. The version of happiness I am describing is not something that arrives for people who have been doing things wrong. It arrives for people who have been doing something right consistently over a significant period of time without necessarily receiving visible evidence that the rightness was producing anything. You have been doing something right. I want to be specific about what that something is. You have been real. Not in every moment and not perfectly, but fundamentally in the baseline commitment to engaging with your own life from a place of genuine values and genuine perception rather than from whatever position would have produced the most comfortable version of events. In the specific, sometimes costly, entirely unspectacular discipline of seeing things as they actually are and responding to them as they actually are rather than as it would be more convenient for them to be. That realness, sustained over time, builds a particular kind of character. And character, when it meets circumstances that are sized correctly for it, produces the specific kind of happiness I have been describing. The circumstances that are correctly sized for yours are arriving. Let me describe the moment of mind blown as specifically as I can, because I want you to recognize it when it happens rather than moving through it too quickly to be fully in it. It will not feel like what you expected it to feel like. This is the consistent, almost paradoxical quality of moments that exceed expectation. Because the exceeding of expectation means that whatever you expected is not what arrives. Something else arrives. Something whose form is unexpected and whose quality is unexpected and whose specific effect on your interior is therefore not something you had prepared a response to. Your face will do something before you decide what your face should do. Your breath will change. There will be a moment where the ordinary processing that keeps your inner experience organized and manageable and appropriate to the social context you are in temporarily suspends, where the arrival of what is arriving simply exceeds the system's capacity to run the usual programs in the usual way. In that moment, you will simply be present with what is actually happening, not managing it, not organizing it, not converting it into something communicable, just in it. And in it will be the specific, irreplaceable, impossible to reconstruct afterward quality of someone who is receiving something they thought had passed them by, receiving it right now, in this actual, real, present tense moment of their actual, real, present tense life. As we close, I want to give you one thing to carry into the time between now and when this arrives. Permission to want this fully, not the managed version of the wanting, not the version that has been sized for survivability rather than for the full size of what you actually hope for. The actual, full, everything I actually want version. You have been careful with your hope for good reasons, but the carefulness has also cost you something. It has kept you from the specific forward leaning quality of someone who is fully extended toward what they want, who has allowed the wanting to be as large as it actually is without reducing it for protection, that carefulness is no longer necessary. What is coming is going to exceed it anyway. But you will receive it more fully, more completely, more in contact with the actual size of what is arriving if you have already opened to the full size of the wanting before it gets here. Let yourself want this the way you actually want it. All of it. Let yourself want this the way you actually want it. All of it. I want to say one more thing about the wanting before we close, because I think it is the piece that most needs to be said to you specifically. The wanting is not the problem. It has never been the problem. The size of what you want is not a character flaw or an unrealistic standard or an indication that you are asking for something that does not belong to you. It is simply an accurate measurement of what you are actually capable of receiving and what corresponds to what you actually are. Large wanting in a person with genuine depth is not inflated expectation. It is proportionality. The size of the hope corresponds to the size of the interior that will receive what the hope is hoping for, and your interior, Virgo, is genuinely large, genuinely rich, genuinely capable of receiving and sustaining and being nourished by things at the level you have been hoping for. You are not hoping for too much. You have been hoping for exactly enough, and exactly enough is what is on its way. Virgo, you are going to be so happy.